I played with a lot of Spanish guilds too, actually. I played with Inri, I played with Bro, I played with Eins, I played with TWVW.
I can't wait to find out if AZURE and I were on Kining at the same time and just like passed each other like two ships in the night.
That is true. I just recently ran with Roy with his last hurrah before he became an ANET partner for GG and World. And that got
You
me
mean
into GG.
ANET Roy? Oh
Yes,
my
one and only.
gosh.
Yeah, and he showed me a couple of things that even I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. I like this.
If you would like to support this podcast, subscribing to the channel and sharing with others is a free way to do so. You can also leave feedback in the comments below or join my Discord. Disclaimer: this podcast is largely based on experience and opinion. Your own may differ. Please be respectful if you'd like to voice this. Also keep in mind this season was recorded in July and August of 2022, so information may be outdated or the guests may have differing opinions in the future. Welcome back to Say Chat, a group discussion podcast where we get to the point about interesting topics because we know you have games to play. We're here with our Season 1 panel, Commanders Globe, Chef, AZURE, and KAHMEENA. You guys want to say hi?
Yo, it's Chef.
Hello.
What up?
Hey, it's your boy.
Here we go.
God.
We're back. Last episode, I picked your guys' brains a little bit about motivation and things like that. What motivated you to command? What kept you commanding? It was a really interesting subject. You guys on YouTube haven't listened to it. I would really suggest going and listening to it. We really got deep about motivations and why everyone tags. We kind of discussed finding motivation and what it is and stuff like that. I think motivation is kind of a perfect segue into individuality. That's my opinion, though. I'm not sure if others feel that way. Just simply because there's a lot of things that could motivate you that end up having a lot to do with your style as a commander, like history and who you followed in the past and things like that. So I want to dive deep and just kind of get to know you guys as commanders, your styles, and specifically your history and how you think your history influenced you in starting out and kind of as you developed over time. So we're going to start with AZURE this time. I'm really interested to know, like, what's a little bit of your history? What commanders did you follow at the start? What guilds were you in? Let us know a little bit about that.
Sure. So this takes place before Heart of Thorns, while Living World Season 1 was kind of active, before Living World Season 2, actually. I got Guild Wars 2. I picked Stormbuff Isle because that's where the server my friend was in. And then I joined this guild called Calm Before the Storm. The guild tag is just called Calm. And they're a PvX guild. They played World versus World like once a week or twice a week, something like that. So, that's who I played World versus World with first. Then I got involved with another guild, still on Stormbluff Isle, Knights Templar. I met Canis Lupus. I met Lauren Michael, the other KT members. And they were a bit more bigger into World versus World. So I followed that group, played with them. Really fun group of people. Lots of, nice memories because that was my first experience in World vs. World. After that, I decided to join a more hardcore World vs. World guild. My first hardcore World vs. World guild was Beast. This is still in Stormbluff Isles. There was a commander named The Alchemist, and that's really when I started, I guess, level myself up, become more competitive, because this was like just an actual fight guild. And that's when I started commanding for the very first time, because Alchemist, he took smoke breaks a lot after fights, and someone else would need to pick it up after him while he's out smoking. It's like a 10-minute, 5-minute break, whatever. From there, I think Beast disbanded kinda, and then I went back to Calm and KT, and I commanded for them instead of me being a follower like I used to. I just started being the leader. They made me the world commander, so I did that for a bit. Afterwards, I transferred servers. I can't really remember anymore what server this was. It was like a while back. I think I went to Blackgate at one point. I was in this guild called Unbreakable Dynasty, UD. played with them. I was their world commander for that too. I also played with Bannock. This is back in SBI before I transferred. His guild was called AW. I can't remember now. It's been a while.
Is that
A lot of-
Avalon's Wrath's AW or a different AW?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
that was Avalon's Wrath, but that's a different guild. I don't think Bannock was in that one. I can't
Okay.
remember what Bannock's guild is called.
It was way
Yeah.
before my time.
Yeah, I was in a bunch of guilds. I was in Calm, KT, Avalon's Wrath. I was in Unbreakable Dynasty. Fast forward a bit. After I left Blackgate, I played with Indo for a bit when he was still kind of new or like still up and coming. I think they were called like, gosh, what were their guild called before they were OP? They were like
Tempest
AWs.
Wolves?
Yeah, Tempest Wolves. That's what they were
Were you
called.
on Kining the same time I was on Kining?
I don't know.
We'll find out when I talk about my history.
All right. So then I went to Kining. I took a break from Guild Wars 2 for a while, actually, because of college, and I focused on other things. Maybe took like a year break or something like that. But going back to my history, when I went to Kining, I played with Fork. That's where Commander Zog is. I played with Hell, is another guild. Rainia's in there. She was on the Indo podcast. I played with a lot of Spanish guilds too, actually. I played with Inri. I played with Bro. I played with Eins. I played with TWVW.
You can tell the excitement in
I
his
know.
voice
I
right
know.
there. He just octave level went up.
Dude, those were good guilds, though. I remember playing with them and fighting them.
Yeah. Let's see then. So it's interesting because I got to experience World Commanding in Spanish. I don't like it. Don't ever make me do it. I understand Spanish. I am Spanish, if you didn't know. So
Oh,
I mean,
no, actually, I did not.
but yeah, Bro was a fight guild. Inri's a fight guild. Eins was, I guess, kind of in the middle. Basically, what I'm trying to get to. Oh, and then of course after all that, I went to Hardstuck and I commanded for Hardstuck for a bit. And now I'm back in Caning because I just wanted to play with my friends. So the whole reason why I was, explaining all these guilds I was in is because I've been up and down around the block. I play with fight guilds. I play with casual guilds. I play with roaming guilds. Oh, like Sin. I played with Sin. There's lots of Sins out there, actually. But there's like a Caning Sin, and then I met the SBI Sin. Basically, what I'm trying to say is my individuality comes from following different commanders in different guilds, playing with different people. As you can probably tell, some of these guilds are fight guilds, like really hardcore. Some of them are GVG guilds, and some of them are a bit more casual. So that's what created me. I'm a pugmander at the end of the day. I do half fighting and then half, PPT. I enjoy both aspects of World versus World. I love fighting. I also like pushing and capturing objectives because that's where the fight's going to show up when they come defend. And it can be challenging. So I think that's pretty much it for my history.
Yeah, you definitely have been like around the block. I didn't know you've been in that many guilds. I knew that you had like explored and stuff like that and been like, a lot of people and things like that, but I didn't realize it was like that extensive. So that was actually really cool to hear. That's way before my time. I've only been playing since 2020, so but yeah, Globe, I'd like to know a little bit about your history. I know that you are just starting out in World versus World. So I wonder if you could maybe brush on kind of your commanding in PvE and how your histories there translated into World versus World commanding and things like that. Just overall history with you.
Well, first of all, World versus World wise, I switched servers a lot for some reason. I don't know what I was trying to find, but hey, I was just switching all around the place. And then Aztec was like, hey, we're changing our server from Underworld to Ruins of Sirmia. Operation on Ruins Sirmia, who would have thought? I was like, yeah, I'll join to that. So yeah, here I am basically. I didn't have many experiences around other commanders. I've met a few of them and joined them on voice. Some are really aggressive sounding as well. Meanwhile, some other ones are much more organized, I would say. It really does depend on which commander to join because they are all individual by themselves. However, PvE and PvP wise, I've been really into raids. I've been joining stuff like raid speed clearing with Teapot, as well as actual boss speed kills. I'm actually holding a record in Conjured Amalgamate, the first boss of Wing 6 raid, which is a 1 minute and 21 kill, together with the Calamity. It is very big indeed. And of course, PvP wise, I have created a theme for Hardstock with the funny name. Prepare for it. Help me, step bro, I'm Hardstock.
Oh no.
Yep. With that, I'm going around contesting other teams with basically 4 other people. So there is the PvP side of it. And now, of course, World versus World, another thing that I'm getting competitive into, as you may have heard from the other episodes that were already done.
Yeah, we're gonna kind of touch on how we think this history influenced our play style a little bit later after we hear everyone's history. But I'm really interested in hearing like how you think your PvE and competitive PvP play styles have influenced your style in World versus World, and like how it's influencing your developing style is a better way to put it because you are a newer commander. But for now, I want to talk about everyone's history. So we're going to move over to Chef, who's another vet player who's played for a long time, and get some of the history behind him. So, Chef, you would?
Yeah. I can't wait to find out if AZURE and I were on Kining at the same time and just like passed each other like 2 ships in the night. So I started playing like 3 years ago, I think. I started on Sorrow's Furnace, or Sad Oven, and hit 80, got into World v World, and got into World v World while Sorrow's Furnace was linked to Kining. So if you're not familiar with the way that server architecture works in Guild Wars, everything is single shard except for World v World. And in World v World, your server dictates the people who you play with and the people who you play against. So basically, since release, your server identity and the groups that you play with has been like a big deal, where you have a ton of server pride and you have a ton of like server recognition based on what server you're on. So during the time that Sorrow's Furnace was linked to Kining, there was a massive informal alliance of guilds on that server. It was Indo and Eldzvada Dodds running Tempest Wolves, which later became OP. It was Malevolent running Onslaught. It was Ruthless running Knights of the Temple. It was IPEA running Malicious Intent. And I think there was one more guild on there somewhere. And all of these guys would at least sometimes, if not usually, public tag at that point. So it was like, it was a golden age for a random guy coming to EBG and like finding out what's happening in the game. So I got to follow all those different guys and see all their different kinds of strategies. And eventually I got to the point where I was like, I think World versus World is a thing that I want to do longer term. I should join a guild, because that's, like, get into the community. So I joined IPEA and Malicious Intent because that was the group I was running the most with. A couple months later, that guild ended up folding, and then I joined K&T after that because I had the most fun running with Ruthless when he was doing his commanding. And then past that, there were some relinks, and that alliance structure kind of broke up, and now we're all kind of scattered. So K&T wound up on Fort Aspenwood, along with King Bullyfoot and Hate, which is the other group that I run with. Indo is on SOS now, I think, is where he usually tags with OP. And Onslaught wound up on Anvil Rock and then kind of stopped playing. I think they're either like in hibernation or just aren't playing anymore. But it was really that introduction of like me being in the right place at the right time with all these different big organized groups that were all pug tagging at the same time that really got me into like, oh, this is a lot of fun. I want to keep exploring this. And, later when we get to like the discussion about exclusivity and toxicity, despite the fact that I mostly run with closed guilds now and, I only basically tag when we're closed, it's still so important for the community to have these commanders like, AZURE and KAHMEENA and Globe who are out there publicly and saying, hey, come join this squad. Let's go do some fun stuff. That was my introduction to the whole game mode, and it's why I'm still playing it now.
I mean, in a way, it's everyone's introduction, right? Like pug tags are paramount to the world, like the health of world versus world, because of that. Because generally, if you're joining world versus world, unless you have friends already who have a guild that they invite you to the guild and stuff like that, you're gonna go in and you're not gonna know, and you're gonna join random tags that are just out on the map. So yeah, I agree with you in terms of that. I think pug manding and open tag is super important. But we will touch on that later in meta and toxicity and inclusive blah blah blah. I can't speak, but yeah, that word. For now, we're gonna move on to KAHMEENA and get a little bit of KAHMEENA's history, because KAHMEENA's been around for a long time, right, KAHMEENA?
And so I've been playing this game since launch. I used to play Guild Wars 1. I still kind of play Guild Wars 1. I wish I for Guild Wars 1, honestly, but yeah, I've been playing this game for a long time. When the game first came out, I play Star Wars Galaxy, Dark Age of Camelot, all the good stuff. But my friends didn't really like playing, like not making me stick to the game mode. Wasn't until I came back recently, because I did take a break of the game, as I think everyone should, no matter what game you're playing. I don't want to take that. I started getting back into World v World and started to push myself. So I haven't really followed a few commanders. Like I the only two that honestly, one of them is even on here, where it says Holy and Mello from the Guild Tofu and FA. Both these people were probably my biggest learning how to be a commander outside of my previous games and doing, at least for in Guild. A lot of my individuality comes from those types of games. Why, like when I run, I do what I do per se, because that's what I'm used to. My mindset coming from when I was a kid playing competitive RTS games, Warcraft 3. I was very good at and wanted to go professional, but I was too sick at the time due to my disease. So that's basically where my individuality comes from. It's kind of very new, and I'm still learning it, especially how to portray that in a Guild Wars 2 sense. When we talk about the things more, I'll go into more details. But yeah, I guess I have the shortest list here compared to everyone when it comes to where does my individual, because I'm kind of figuring it out as I'm going, as I'm streaming.
It's almost like we kind of have different levels of influence and your guys' backgrounds that are influencing your style. So we have Chef and Holy, who are very world versus world community. Their influence is all history based and stuff like that. We have Globe, who's coming over from PvE and PvP and drawing all of his influence and history from that. And then we have KAHMEENA, who's drawing a lot of influence from outside games, it seems like. So with all of these different things and influences and backgrounds, how do you guys think that is influencing the way you're commanding, your style, what you're drawn to, whether it's pug manding or close squad? What do you guys feel in terms of that stuff? What are your thoughts?
I think definitely for AZURE and I, because of all the different commanders we've played with, we'll see commanders do things and we'll either go, yo, that was really fun, I want to command more of that style, or we'll see things that work and we're like, that was really smart what they just did. I should make sure I try and do that when I go out and command. And the more you do that and the more different commanders you see, the more experience you pick up.
That is true. I just recently ran with Roy with his last hurrah before he became an ANET partner for GG and WvW World. And that got
You
me
mean
into GG.
ANET Roy? Oh
Royce,
my
one and only.
gosh.
Yeah, and he showed me a couple of things that even I was like, oh shit, that's awesome. I like this. So yeah. And that also got me into GBG, which I don't think we're going to talk about too much here, but yeah, I'm very much looking into doing that way more just because of him.
Yeah, we're not going to be doing GVGs for this season, but maybe in the future, another series, another season down the line, I'll dive into GVG, because it's just so intricate and there's so many different subjects you could talk about with GVG that I feel like it deserves its own season, instead of just an episode. I want to do it justice, because I feel like it's not really talked about as much as it should be, right?
Yes, I
Yeah.
definitely agree with that.
Yeah. But okay, so for the rest of you, same question. How do you think like this history and background has been influencing your style and things like that?
Well, for me, since I do come from mostly the PvE background, all the PvE bosses and pretty much NPCs are literally just like, hey, these bosses do stuff, so avoid the attacks. Most time you don't have to worry at like DPS or being aggressive as you see in the standard world versus world, and therefore I end up being a lot passive and then getting stoned because the other squad is going aggressive on me, stuff like that. But it does also come at the different tone of voice. Can really think about other commanders from the tone of voice that they use. Some get angry and really tilted, even at the smallest mistakes that people do, just to motivate them to play better. Meanwhile, some are calm and try and tell the people their mistakes to let them learn by themselves without any pressure. And while all of them are different, that also means all of them are unique and work well for different people. Personally, because of my passive playstyle, I would say I am very calm. I'm just like, hey, this here happened because of this. Next time, let's try and do this. So yeah, it really comes down to the tone of voice as well. That makes a big difference.
So your approach to how you're addressing people is influenced by your history, is what you're saying.
Pretty much. I
Okay.
mean, everyone's got their unique style of commanding
Mm-hmm.
and speaking.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I find it kind of interesting that you came to the conclusion that, you know, PvE is very pattern mechanics, right? You know the pattern of the mechanics and you avoid, you know, the damage, you out heal the damage, or you know, you DPS at this, you CC at this. And you translated that into, because I don't need to be as aggressive in PvE, it's making it like it's an obstacle I need to overcome switching into world versus world commanding, because I'm not being aggressive when I need to be in world versus world. I find that really, really interesting how you came to that conclusion, and I agree with it. I definitely agree with it. But do you think it's like a huge obstacle for you, or do you like that kind of more passive play style where you don't like pushing in, you like playing ranged and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, it comes around different for different people. Personally, I like a bit of both. I like a bit of passiveness, just since I'm still figuring things out, playing more passive to try and see if I can avoid the damage or make my squad avoid the damage. If I can't, how could I do that better? I mean, world versus world is about being aggressive, but is also about avoiding the enemy damage, isn't it? Therefore, it is one thing that I try and practice. However, in the end, it does also come into who becomes more aggressive in the end, because usually the most aggressive group comes out on top.
Yeah. Yeah, you just literally like threw it right back into the PvP or PvE stuff, right? You in PvE you're trying to avoid the damage, and now in World versus World you're reflecting that straight back over, and you're trying to avoid the damage in World versus World too. So I find that incredibly interesting how that influences your style overall. Like I didn't even realize that it would get that deep, but I find that really interesting. For the rest of you, I guess that kind of brings up the subject. Like, do you think for like Chef and Holy, because you guys have been around in World versus World a lot, and that's where you draw your influence, do you think being around in World versus World has made you more aggressive versus Globe, who kind of likes playing back and avoiding damage, like in PvE, like mechanics and stuff like that? Do you think that's like a major difference between people who have maybe translated into PV or translated into World versus World from PvE versus people who have gone from World versus World players to World versus World commanders? What do you think?
It's going to be really hard for me to say because Elzada Dodds, Ruthless, and King Bullyfoot are probably three of the more aggressive commanders, like melee oriented, get in and generate downs in melee commanders, like in the game mode. So I don't really like think about in terms of like my own individual style. I have fun in melee. I want to get into melee. Like that is my personality is to push. And so it's really like I've had fights, not to call out Indo, but I've had fights against Indo, which is just, sit at 900, drop a Mesmer Curtain, pull someone, hit them with revs, pull off, wait for cooldowns again. It honestly puts me to sleep. Like, I just want to be pushing and aggressing all the time.
So, kind of what you're saying is, as a PvE player going into World versus World, the biggest difference is in PvE, everything is predictable or rhythmatic. Like, you know what the boss is going to do. Compared to World versus World, everything is unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen. It's a new day every day, it's a new fight every time. Because you have to take consideration your environment, the landscape, positioning,
Yeah,
movement,
it's
your
more
squads.
it's more reactive. More reactive.
Yeah, so it's a big jump and it's a big wake up call. It's a rude awakening actually to PvE players, because then they'll start realizing, oh, I actually have to dodge the circle the enemies are putting down the ground. In regards to aggressiveness and passiveness, for me personally, I think there's a time to be passive and there's a time to be aggressive. Ultimately, and again, this is all about individuality. My style is be patient. Be patient and wait for the right opportunity, especially if it's like it's a 1v1v1. Basically, all three Zergs are there. Be patient and look for the openings to hit them. Because I've done it all. I have tried being passive. I have tried being aggressive. I like either way is fine for me. I don't care. Again, really, it's solely dependent on the squad's capability. Because we can be aggressive and just go straight in, head forward. But sometimes when I do that, my squad just ends up dying, and that's probably because the other squad is just doing way more damage than we are, or we're just not sustaining enough, or we're not doing enough damage to take them down. But yeah, that's pretty much all I would have to say about the conversation we're having here.
I like your answer of wait to find the opening, because I've had that exact thought before when I'm commanding. And if I can't find an opening after about, I don't know, 10 seconds, I'll usually just push and be the person who creates the opening, and then I'll react to the group reacting to the fact that I'm taking the agency in the fight. I can't sit still for that long and wait for the perfect moment versus just go and do it and make something happen and see how they react.
Hey guys, Future Quietly here. We had so much fun with this episode that it ended up going on for way longer than we had planned, which means that I have to come in here and split it into 2 parts. The next part will be releasing next week on Tuesday, so make sure you stay tuned for that. We've really been appreciating all of the support and things like that. So if you do like this podcast, like listening to the podcast, or have anyone that you think would be interested, please share with friends, subscribe, all that good stuff that helps the YouTube algorithm figure out where it is we go in the content creation space. But other than that, hopefully we'll see you next time, chat.